Welcome to the Jazz Piano School Podcast, episode number 85, where we have one mission, that's to help as many interested people around the world learn and improve at jazz piano by providing structured and organized jazz piano education. I'm your host, as always, Brendan Lowe, and thank you so much for joining me. This is the YouTube tutorial of Podcast 85. If you're looking for the full-length audio version, please go to jazzpianoschool.com. Under resources, you'll find podcast, and you'll see our latest episode posted there where you can listen to the entire podcast. I'd highly recommend getting the podcast materials for this episode because it's going to go very deep into Reharm, and that can be located at jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 85. And we are also adding team members onto our education. So if you're interested in writing blog articles to share philosophies on jazz piano, or sometime in the future producing podcasts like this for Jazz Piano School, we would love to have more education on our site that can help others and learn about your philosophies and other people's, and just spreading education around the world to as many people as possible. So please email us at info@jazzpianoschool.com if you are interested. So let's dive right in. So what we're going to be doing here, again, if you've printed out the list, we are going to be going over, I have all my notes here, so excuse my hands if you're watching the video, but we're going to be doing the bridge to rhythm changes. So again, we have 8 bars here, which is different than last week, okay? So we have D7, right, for 2 bars. This is just standard key of B flat for rhythm changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we have 8 bars. We have 2 bars of each. Okay, that's example 1 if you've downloaded the practice materials, the notation. Now, we're going to be building upon the examples we used last week. So first, we can use the tritone, right? We've used the tritone a lot. So instead of going D7 to G7, we can go D7, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, D flat 7, 2, 3, 4, 1. So we still have 2 full measures of each of these. C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, B, 2, 3, 4, 1. And again, if you guys are improvising, sorry, I just want to check my chord wasn't away. If you're improvising, it's the same thing, right? You just improvise over your D7. Wow, that's really loud. Let me turn myself down a little bit. Sorry. So again, one little note, quick thing. If you're playing just shells or rootless voicings and you're using these reharms, I don't think I mentioned this before. If you're playing with a bass player and they're playing the natural chord, like they're playing the note G and you play this voicing, let's say, for example, this will still create a sound over the G7. So your reharm may not completely come off in your playing unless you add the root of the chord that you're playing over. So I'd recommend, if you really want it to come off strong, you play some sort of 5th or bass note down here in the bottom, right? D flat and A flat. So this way, it really ensures that your sound, you're creating that different atmosphere that you're looking for, right? You're creating that new reharm. Otherwise, if you're using rootless voicings, that will sound like a flat 9, right? And your chord here will sound like shells of a G7 and the flat 13 of the G7. So you're not getting the true reharm capabilities. So with all these reharm techniques, you need to add some sort of bass note with the reharm that you're using, unless you're in a intermediate or an advanced position where your bass player can catch the reharm and they hear that, right? If they start walking down by half steps, right? They start doing that, then you're all set. You don't need to do that, okay? But anyway, so we have our tritone. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is example 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2, right? You can solo over all that. Now, you can also do it the other way. So instead of starting on D7, we start on the tritone, we start on A flat, and we just go down by half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess I don't really need to count. Sorry about that. Right? Then you could solo over that reharm as well. Okay. Now this, again, we're just still building upon all the previous steps. You guys probably all know this already. Now step number 3 is using a combination of both of those previous reharms. So previously, in step number 2, we were just walking down by half steps. We started on D7, walked down by half steps using our tritone, or the flip-flop of that is we take the D7, we take the tritone of that, and then we start walking down in half steps to the 5 chord, right? Now, in example number 3, we're combining both of those. So we can go D, D flat. Instead of going down to C, we can use the tritone of C and play G flat 7, and then to F. So we're going D, D, D flat 7. These are just shells in my left hand here. G flat, F7, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. Oh, I did the counting thing again. Here we go. G flat. Right? So it's a really nice kind of texture change because you got you got 2 chromatics, right? Right? And you can do that as well. Now you can also do the flip-flop of that. So instead of starting on D7, we can start on A flat 7, the tritone, right? Now we can go A flat 7, G7. Then instead of going to G flat, right, walking down all in half steps, we jump to the tritone of G flat, which is the original rhythm changes bridge chord, C7, and then to B7, right? So we have A flat 7. Then we jump to C7, and then to B7, right? So if I'm comping, 2, 3, keep counting. And then to B7. So we're doing a combination of both tritoned chromatic reharms, okay? That's step number 3, or example number 3, excuse me. Example number 4 is going to be all tritone subs. So instead of we simply take a tritone sub for the original changes, D, G, C, F. So we go A flat, right, is the tritone of D. D flat is the tritone of G. G flat, the tritone of C. And B7, tritone of F. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's step number 4. I'm kind of going a little faster through these because you guys have, if you've watched the previous 2 videos, you probably have caught on to these already. Now, we get into our relative 2 minor tool, right? We've just been using our tritone tool. Here's our relative 2 minor tool. I really love this one. It creates 2 5s, right? And 2 5s are a much different feeling than a dominant chord. A dominant chord has more tension. A 2 5 has a resolution, and it's got a very distinct sound, right? When I'm going A minor to D7, it feels much different than just playing D7, okay? It definitely was soloing too. If you're reflecting the harmonies in your left hand through your A minor 7, right? That resolution of the 7 going to the 3 in your 2 5 is going to be much different than just having your dominant chord. So example number 5, again, you guys know this if you watched previous videos, but we're using our relative 2 minor. So instead of just 2 bars of D7, we're going to have a bar of A7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we put the relative 2 minor in front of G7, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we keep going, all relative 2 minors in front of our original rhythm section bridge changes. C minor, F7, okay? And again, if you're comping, it's great to use this comping-wise behind soloists, right? Again, if you're soloing, and so you get these string of 2 5s that sound really nice. I really like that one. Okay, I got to flip my notes here. Now, let me see. That was number 5. I have so many notes here. Number 6. Okay. Now what we're doing is I have to explain the dominant chords first. So we're taking the D7. We're taking the tritone reharm that we did in example 2. Okay, we're taking those chords, D7, D flat, C, B, and we're putting the relative minor to to that reharm now. So we're going A minor, D7, A flat minor, D flat 7, and again, guys, these are all just shells with bass notes. G minor 7 to C7, F sharp minor to B7, okay? And it's a bar each. So we get chromatic descending 2 5s, right? So that's what your progression sounds like. Again, it's a very nice thing to do. Just a little tip or disclaimer, I guess. You have to, if you're playing in a band, a lot of things you need to listen, right? If the bass player is not matching you, or if the soloist is not matching you, or people are in different spots, these are all discretionary. You have to kind of use these at your own discretion to see if you're able to do this. If you're just randomly playing reharms all the time, it's going to sound like they're going to turn around and look at you like, what is this person doing, you know? If it's your solo, absolutely do this. I mean, the bass player is going to be playing some sort of something of rhythm changes bridge, so it will work. And you can definitely reflect your reharm, like I said, again, by playing fifths or playing, I like 1, 3, and 7, like you see me using here. You can jump from the root to the shells. Sorry. So the F sharp to the B7. Again, using that little reflection tool will really bring out the reharm again. So chromatic descending 2 5s with your relative minor. Now, we take the other flip-flop example of the tritone found in example 2, but we're starting with our A flat 7 now instead of our D7. We're descending chromatically with our tritone reharms, right? But now we add our relative 2 minor. So instead of A flat, G, G flat, F, we go E flat, A flat 7. This is example 7 now. D minor, G7, C sharp, F sharp 7, C minor, F7, B minor, E7, right? So it's the flip-flop of what we just did. So now we have E flat minor. Did I screw that up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, there's no B minor, E7. Sorry, I kept going. I was like, that's more than 8 bars. So once you get to the C minor to the F7, that's your last change, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, A flat 7, D, G, C sharp, F sharp, C, F, right? And then you're back to 1. All right, so that's number 7. Now, we can do a combination of both. Again, we're just using the previous tritone reharms and putting relative 2 minors in front. So step number 8, okay, we're going to take D7 and D flat and G flat to F and put the relative 2 minor in front of those. So A minor 7, D7, A flat minor 7, D flat 7. Now we go to D flat minor, G flat, C, F, right? Okay, here it is. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's what it is. I really like the switch. Okay, there's a really drastic change when you have the descending 2 5s, but then on here, you don't keep ascending, you switch to the other one. It's a really cool change. I like that. Now, again, that's example number 8. Example number 9 is going to be the flip-flop of that. Okay, so we're A flat 7, G7, and then again, instead of continuously descending with the tritone, we go to the other flip-flop. So A flat, G7, then, lost my place. Where are we? A flat, G7, C7, B7, okay? A flat, G, right? And then the original, and then the tritone. Okay, so now we have E flat going to A flat, D minor going to G. These are rootless voicings in my right hand, bass notes. Then we go to, again, G minor to C7, F sharp to B7, okay? So here it is, comping, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the change. Okay, really, really nice, powerful movements there, right? And then back to B flat. All right. So that was number 9. Let me see here. Number 10. Okay, now we're getting into, well, not quite, yeah, I guess quite into it. So if you remember from the previous episode, I talked about how we can approach chords. We can approach all dominant chords with secondary dominant chords. So this is where you're going to have to kind of open your mind a little bit. With the first chord of the Rhythm Changes Bridge, we have a D7. So if you try and think about what dominant chord resolves down a fifth to land on D7, well, that chord would be A7. Right? Because A7 is going to resolve by down a fifth to resolve to D7. It's a secondary dominant, okay? Again, secondary dominants are another tool. It's another theory tool that you can use to expand and fill in the gaps to your training to create freedom, okay? Now, A7 leads to D7, right? So it's a secondary dominant. Because it leads to D7, we have 2 bars to actually get to the D7. We don't need to just spend 2 bars on D7. We can actually play the A7 for 1 bar, then lead into the D7, okay? Play the D7 again, lead into the G7. G leads to C, C leads to F, okay? This is going to be example 10. Both of these are example 10. I need to write a note to myself. Sorry about that. Okay, cool, because I actually didn't have that on my notes. Anyway, so it would sound like this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So obviously we're essentially repeating a chord to lead in the next chord because we started on a different chord. Does that make sense? So we're soloing or comping A7 to D7, D7 to G7. Now, if you start to kind of think about the tools we've used a lot of different tools. We haven't done any reharm to that except the use of secondary dominant tool. Now, if we take our tritone tool and we start to incorporate that, we don't need to start on A7, right? What is the tritone of A7? Well, that's E flat 7. So instead of repeating chords, right, we can go E flat 7, D7, right? E flat was the tritone of A. Now, instead of repeating D, we can play the tritone of that to create some movement. So we can play A flat, G, D flat, C, G flat, F, okay? So again, we're getting to the thick of it here, the thick of reharm. And by the way, we're going to be creating a reharm specialty course actually that will give you much more in-depth look at these, adding extensions. It's going to be one of our specialty courses, the reharm specialty course. It will go over all this in depth. That's going to be coming out. We got our accompanying singer course, which is coming out next. But anyway, so if you're interested in more of this, don't worry, we're going to let you know about that. So E flat 7, D7, A flat, G, C, G flat, F. Okay? Now again, we can solo over this too. So we have E flat 7, A flat, D flat. Kind of hard to talk and improv at the same time, I realized. Or you can comp, right? Okay, I'm trying to hit those bass notes for you instead of just kind of rootless comping there so you can hear the tonality and the movement of the bass. So that's number 10. All right, so now we're incorporating, get this, right? Secondary dominants, but the tritone of all our secondary dominants. Getting out there. We're going to take it a step further. If you're lost, just try and revisit all of it and kind of go through it again. Now, we're going to take it a step further. Again, we're just combining the use of our tools. So this is just a prime example how if I taught this to you, if I showed you what I was doing and you learned how to play it, yeah, you could play it. Could you use it in another setting or fashion to express yourself? No, right? And that's what I truly believe. My educational belief is to help teach you these tools, right? And you will be able to use these for the rest of your life. Kind of like the teach a man to fish analogy, or whatever you call those small stories, right? Then he'll eat for life because he can fish for himself. That's what I want to do for all my students, and we want to do at Jazz Piano School as well. So now we start to get into the relative minor to the tritone of our secondary dominants, okay? So we're going to add B flat minor to E flat 7, A minor to D7, E flat minor. See, we go back up here, it sounds like, to A flat 7, D minor, G, A flat, D flat, G, C, G flat, D flat, G flat, C, F. So we have a 2/5 per bar, okay? This is for the advanced players. This is very difficult. Comping could be a little easier. Soloing, not so much. Very, very difficult, right? To hit all these changes accurately and well. Even difficult for me as well. There's a lot of movements going on here. You know, it's like soloing over giant steps. So these are 2/5s at least, so it's a little bit easier. But again, here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a 2/5 per bar. We're adding the relative minor again in for the tritone of our secondary dominants. Okay, here it is comping. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're back to B flat. Let's give this a try, soloing, okay? Again, I'm using my 1-7-3 here to reflect these movements within our reharm, okay? Or sometimes the jumping of the 5th, possibly I might do that, I'm not sure. Here we go, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're back to B flat. So it wasn't great. I definitely need to practice that a little bit more, but off the cuff, I mean, it worked. So that is, I mean, it's just, and there's so many more ways. You can keep flip-flopping all of those. I can't even get into the amount of options that you have, but it's up to you. I'm serving you the door open. You can do as many different tritones, secondary dominants, relative minors as you want, right? Now, number 12 is we're using double chords, okay, like I originally talked about in the original example. So instead of going A7, D7, D7, G7, right, I've just added one tritone in some areas. And again, you can change this however you want to make it for yourself. Play around with it. So instead of the A7, I put an E flat 7, D7. I'm going to keep the D7, go to D flat, keep the D flat, go to C, keep the C, go to B. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And that's number 12, okay? And what we do here now is, again, we add our relative 2 minors, okay? So it sounds like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you have a repeat. I really like the repeat of the harmony. You have B flat minor, E flat, A, D. Then you repeat the A, D, A, D, A flat, D flat, A flat, D flat, G, C, G, C, F sharp, B. All right, improv 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I was doing a bar each. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I struggled there. Let me try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was a little better. So, again, it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy for me. There's so many 2/5s, hitting those changes. I was trying to do continuous eighth note movements. For some of you guys who want to improv over this, it doesn't have to be continuous eighth note movements. I mean, that's a lot. Again, if you're blowing through those changes with all eighth notes, very difficult. If I were to create motifs or more of a storyline, which I usually do, I really wanted you to hear the reflections of the movements and the harmonies. That's why I was playing continuous eighth notes. But if I open my solo up a little bit more, it's obviously much easier. You just need to catch the changes. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So much easier. If I leave some space, I create motifs and use those motifs by displacing them over the 2/5s. So that's a little tip there. Again, the way I'm improvising, you don't necessarily have to do that by any means, right? Leave it open. You could play 1 or 2 notes. You could catch one of the 2/5s, just comp one of the 2/5s. It doesn't have to be so intense like I originally demonstrated, okay? So that's number 13. That was getting into the very, very thick of it. And again, you can start to mix and match those on your own. Now, number 14, we're getting back into our sus chords. This is going to be, we're coming down the hill now, right? We've went over the hill. We're coming back down into the easier sections. Now, we can create sus chords, right, from our dominant chords. So instead of playing D7, we can play D sus, right? A very nice sound, okay? So we can play all sus chords for the entire, all the changes. We can play D sus, right? Going to G7 sus, going to C sus, going to F sus. So we can just use all sus chords, right? Here's what that would sound like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're back at 1, okay? Definitely a more modern sound, a completely different texture than the 2/5s, right? The 2/5s are definitely going to sound like more of a bebop. The sus chords are going to sound more modern. You can definitely get a more of a Herbie chick feel out of those sus chords. Now, number 15 is going to be sus chords with resolutions. So again, here's a prime example. If you have the sus chord to the D7, the only difference between a 2/5 and that is the bass note. So it's very important that you continuously use your root on D sus to D7. Otherwise, it's going to sound like a 2/5, right? You hear how close that is? So the resolution is only happening from the 4 to the 3rd, but the bass note stays the same, okay? Now, one way you can do that, again, is just the bass player will be doing that. You don't even need to worry about it this time, actually, because the bass player is just going to be playing D. So you can actually do your resolution in your hand or play rootless 2/5s by playing your A minor to D7. That's going to create your sus going to your D7. Okay, so that'll create a sus sound because the bass player will be playing D going to D7. Or if you're playing solo, right, just hit that D or 1 and 5 first, kind of like the McCoy style, right? And then, so again, root in 5 to your minor rootless voicing to your resolution. Root in 5 or octave, you can do octaves if you want. Just bass note. Rootless G minor to C7, C minor to resolution. But however you want, you're just catching that resolution. That's number 15. Okay, number 16. Excuse me. We got 2 more. Is going to be the sus with the tritone again? So we have D7. D flat 7 sus. This is a really nice sound, all chromatic, right? And anything I've previously talked about with dominant chords, you can use the sus sound, right? You can use the sus sound over any of the reharms I've previously talked about involving dominant chords. That's completely up to you. So we have our D7 sus. So all sus chords. I don't know why I'm playing so fast, but I think that sus sound just makes me feel like a driving, swinging sound. Again, D sus, D flat sus, C sus, B7 sus, right? So chromatic descending sus chords, okay? So you're using the sus with the tritone now. Then again, the last one I'm going to do is I'm going to go to number 17 is going to be the flip-flop of that. So we're using A flat 7, G7, G flat 7, F7, and we're going to make all of those sus chords. So A flat sus, G sus, G flat sus, F sus, right? Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. 1. I was thinking about something else. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, and then back at 1. So again. So all your sus chords you got there descending chromatically, all right? So that's number 17. Now that's it. That's the end. I mean, we went really, really deep there because we have more space on the rhythm changes bridge. And again, if you're encountering originals of tunes you're playing with or standards, your options are going to differ depending upon the amount of space you have, depending upon the chords you want to reharm, depending upon where they're going. I mean, what I'd recommend is sitting down with tunes you want to look to reharm and just, pencil them in. Try a couple things out, see what you like, see how far you can go. But definitely practice. Sorry, my voice is going. Practice the changes in your movements separately before adding them into the piece. That is the JPS system. We learn our theory tool. We're going to practice technique that relates to our theory tool, practice improv that relates to our theory tool, and then finally the last step is going to be implementing all of our work that we've previously done into a tune. That way you can use it over any tune. So essentially, again, you're learning freedom. You're breaking out of the cage of just kind of replicating what other people are doing through transcription or just being shown, through different tutorials. So you want to learn tools that are going to allow you to progress and give you freedom of self-expression. Okay? Thank you so much for listening today. Again, if anyone's out there is interested in, excuse me, interested in becoming part of the JPS content education team, definitely email us at info@jazzpianoschool.com. Wow, I'm struggling. I got to go. Got to get some water. Thank you so much for being here, guys. It's always a pleasure. And until I talk to you in the next episode, happy practicing.